So last year I started a project combining modular synthesizers and cinematic videography. It failed miserably, and I don't know why, but I decided to try it again. This time it's gonna work. Alright, so this is my modular synthesizer. Just put this in. Hopefully I'm in the frame now. Quickly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to compose music with a modular synthesizer for places that I find inspiring. Normally it will be architecture or nature, or ideally combination of architecture and nature, which I find the most interesting. And I'm going to do it only with a modular synthesizer. And before I go out and I'll show you the place I'm shooting first, I wanted to explain what this is, for the people who don't know and are not diving into all the channels online on YouTube. This is a system. It's not a synthesizer. It's a system that comprises of a bunch of modules. Each of these modules is doing one or a few things, but it's quite limited. This is a sampler, this is just a sound source, another sound source, this is a mixer, an amplifier, a sequencer. Each of these is doing only a bunch of things, and the combination of them is what makes this musical. And a good analogy for this is you're literally designing the instrument and the musician that plays the instrument. It's like, imagine that you have an orchestra and you have the composer, and the composer knows that there is a piano, there is a cello, there is a violin, and there are musicians that are playing each of these instruments. And then what the composer is doing is writing all the different notes that needs to be played in a certain order that they need to be played in a certain time and so on. So at the end, a professional musician is able to play this composition. Now, what is happening here is sort of similar. You have musicians, like this module here, which is a sequencer, and you have modules that are like a sound source. It is like a cello, but you can also design the cello in such a way that would be not like any other instrument you've heard before. It'll be really electronic or really acoustic, but weird, because you're able to really go into the detail of that instrument and design how it actually sounds like. So it's not only about the melody that it can generate, but also the way that the filter opens, the way that the distortion opens or closes, and so on and so on. So this is how this works, and what I'm going to do for this project is inspired by a place we're going to go to in a bit. I'm going to design a patch, a combination of modules that is working in a certain way that I am able to control live when I play on that location. Without further ado, let's go see the place I'm going to compose music for. Whew, it is cold. The main challenge in this project is to figure out how sound can complement visual. And I'm just getting really, really close to this architecture phenomenon, which is the depot. And you can actually see that it's completely built, surrounded or covered by mirrors. So, what do I find so interesting about this building? It's not really its purpose that I find so exciting. It is interesting. It's going to be used as the archive for the Boijmans museum, which is a pretty big deal, and it's going to be accessible for everybody to just see the archive of a museum, which is making this noisy, and it's going to be used, so it's going to be for the archive of the museum, and it's also going to be available for the public to just see this archive, which is not a very normal thing. But what I really find interesting about this is the space it's taking and the way it changes the space around it. I find it really interesting because, not like any other building, what you're seeing is not really the building. What you're seeing is a reflection of the space around the building, which is quite unique. So you are seeing a building, but you're not really seeing a building. You're saying the space around the building. It's a bit of a mindfuck. Anyways, the point is that if I'm creating some sort of a music composition, it needs to consider this heavily. The mirrors are actually modulating the space around. So it's not just a perfect projection or reflection of what you see around the building, it's a modulated version of it. And the reason that I find this so interesting is because of the concept of frequency modulation with synthesis. So with that modular synthesizer that I was showing earlier, I can actually create frequency modulation. It's a pretty simple concept where you have a frequency, a certain frequency, like, let's say like a sine wave that is running 450 hertz. And then you have another one that is playing on top of it and modulating it. And you can really see it visually as well when you're looking into, in the oscilloscope. You can see how the frequency is being modulated and it creates a different thing. It is the same sound, same source essentially, but it sounds really different. And in a sense, I think this is what we're seeing here. There is like a building with blocks of mirrors, and because of the curviness and the fact that these are a bunch of blocks, like I don't know, hundreds of blocks that are connected one to another, so everything you're seeing around is bent, which makes me think about frequency modulation. I don't know. Anyway, back to the studio. So studio time is not going to happen this week. That is because life. Had to finish a couple of things for work, had to do a bunch of stuff that apparently is more important. It is 4:16 in the morning on a Sunday, and I am shooting a video. And that is because I set myself a goal that I will release a weekly video with a process of a creative project, which I am doing. I just didn't manage to do it the way that I wanted to do it. Coffee. But I did launch my company website this week for all the design stuff I do for startups and students. And I also almost finished a gallery for the exhibition I am going to have. I'm curating an exhibition where my students built synthesizers. Like, we have 30 synthesizers that are super weird and crazy. And we're going to have this exhibition on the 29th of February, so I made a gallery online for this, which is almost finished. And I have a 2-year-old, and that takes quite some time. So, next week, sound design. I think I'm going to sleep now. Subscribe, follow, like, stuff. I'll see you next week, hopefully.